Good morning. Look, in this video, we are going to prove mathematically why Terrence Crawford versus Boots Ennis is the fight we must see next from Terrence Bud Crawford. First, I want to say this before I get into the math and break everything down. Customer is king. I want you to understand this. Customer is king. No matter what any business tell you, no matter how any business try to persuade you, you are king. Customer is king. This is what I mean. First of all, I got my bachelor's in economics. I got my master's in business administration, and I own two businesses with employees who I manage. Okay. And I will not make any money, no profit, if I do not make the product or provide the service that customers demand. So customer is king. No matter what business tried to tell you or shape you and try to push, you demand what the business should provide to you as a product and or a service. What I don't want to see in the comments is any of you justifying why a fighter and or the business of boxing is providing you with a product or service that you do not demand. The best way to know what the customer demands is to actually ask them. Just ask the customer. That is called a survey or a poll. Now, before I give you the results of our survey that I posted in our community, we have to do a little math on what to expect out this survey. This is what I mean. For any survey, the basic idea, okay, bare minimum is a 95% confidence that the results of that survey reflects the population. A 5% margin of error. So what's the population? Who's the population? What's the number I came up with as far as representing or being the population that I want the demand or the product or service to satisfy? I said 700,000 people. Why? Because Errol Spence versus Terrence Bud Crawford got 700,000 pay-per-view buys. Now, we do know that, there are people who, steal the fights and stream the fights and stuff like that. But this is the only number that we actually have, 700,000 pay-per-view buys. So let's just say the population is 700,000 people. So what I did was, I used tools that is provided on the internet. Survey calculator, where the calculator breaks down, okay, this is your population, under 95% confidence that this reflects what the population is actually saying, and a 5% margin of error. Here's the sample size you must need. But I wanted to go further. I don't want the confidence to be 95%. Let's make the confidence 99%. And I don't want the margin of error at 5%. Let's make it at 1%. And out of 700,000 people, a population of 700,000 people, here's the sample size we must need to satisfy that. Well, our survey has 20,000 people who voted. Check it out. That's right. 73% of you demand Boots Ennis for Crawford as the next opponent and not Errol the Truth Spence. And I want to say this to the business of boxing. I want to say this to Terrence Bud Crawford. The people do not demand that fight. That fight may just lose money. Only 27% of the people want that fight over Boots Ennis, and that's the rematch with Errol the Truth Spence, okay? So the demand is not there. 20,000 people, which is over the 16,000+ people that will satisfy what we want out of our survey. It satisfies it even more, okay? So that's either over a 99% confident or less than a 1% margin of error. So the customer is king. You guys demand Boots Ennis instead of Errol the Truth Spence. It is what it is. If we do not get what we demand, you're going to have the business of boxing failing more and more and more often, okay? You already have HBO dropping boxing. You already have Showtime dropping boxing. You have ESPN firing people from ESPN. We don't know what's going to happen with Top Rank in the near future. What we're trying to do is help make boxing the #1 sport in the world, and that's by giving the people what they demand. I don't want you guys to waver. Now, when it comes to Boots Ennis, I know people are like, well, how familiar are people with Boots Ennis? If you look at that survey, you can possibly say, well, people just don't want Errol Spence next. They can just want anybody other than Errol the True Spence. Who really knows Boots Ennis? Let's look at how many people watched that $1 million worth of game, that Gilly the Kid interview with Terrence Bud Crawford leading up to Errol Spence, where he discussed Boots Ennis. That's right. In so many months, over 1 million people watched that. Okay, now let's see how many people watched The Breakfast Club, where Boots Ennis was also mentioned as a possible opponent for Terrence Bud Crawford. Over 700,000 people. So people are either already familiar with Boots or getting familiar with Boots surrounding Terrence Crawford's popularity. Okay, let's go a little bit further. Let's see how many people watched the highlights on YouTube of Terrence Crawford versus Errol the True Spence. Over 4 million people. Meaning that if you didn't know who Terrence Crawford is, or if you didn't know who he was, you know now. That's over 4 million people. Let's look at Boots Ennis by himself. How many people looked at the highlights of Boots Ennis' last fight against Villa? Close to 600,000 people. So if you look at how many people could possibly watch this fight, Boots Ennis is bringing in people who are interested in him. And Terrence Bud Crawford has definitely grew the amount of people who are excited or becoming fans of Terrence Bud Crawford. So here's my point, and this is what the math is proving. The math is proving that there are more people than you think who are now familiar with Boots Ennis, and there are far more people who are now familiar with Terrence Bud Crawford, with Canelo Alvarez being focused on the Benny Boo Boo winner, with Tim Tszyu being focused on the undisputed matchup with Jermell Charlo, with there being little to no demand for the Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford rematch. The math has proven that the best way for Terrence Crawford to go is versus Boots next. Let me know how you all feel in the comments below. ShowBizz, little dope. I'm out.